welcome everyone. This is our intro for the 5 signals. And what this call is going to be about is laying out what the 5 signals are. And I'm going to talk about probiotics and cleansing and pH balance, what happens when your system is in balance. Then the other thing I want to talk about is the stimulant-driven culture and the stimulant-driven nervous system and all of that. And I'll just start laying all this out. So we have 5 basic signals that our body is always giving us from birth. And these signals have to do with nourishment and how it is that we balance our body. So you'll have a craving for 5 things: hydration, water, protein, sugar. So if you have a craving for something salty, you're looking for minerals. And can anyone think of what the last one is?
Fat.
Fat, exactly. And we would also say that oxygen and sun are obviously huge, as in very, very important as far as nourishment goes. And we'll focus on all of this, but this is the thing that's so beautiful about the 5 signals. First of all, it's where you become self-referential. The 5 signals come from your body very specifically to what's going on with you right now. It's where it is that all of the billions of years of the organismic process come together to communicate very, very simply to you what it is that you require for balance, for vitality, for clarity, and for peak performance, meaning where you're really grounded in your true being, in your gut knowing, and able to step forward in your life from that place. Now, I want to just put this out there right now. Everything that I'm sharing with you comes from my own experience. It's what I've learned over the last, well, really my whole life, but over the last 12 years of really focusing on aligning myself with my true being, with my vital health, and being alive, being really capable to step forward into my own inspiration and share my gifts with the world. So out of that, all of this has developed. And I won't go into my whole story, but I had a systemic infection, and I have had all kinds of different things in my system that have all brought me to amazing resources. I had a huge communication shift in my system where my enteric brain clarified. The enteric brain is the gut brain. That's the digestive system. That's the enteric nervous system. It's the small intestines. That's the heart of the enteric brain. And the enteric brain actually starts in the throat and goes all the way through the digestive system. And it's, like I said, the heart of that is in the small intestines, and that's where the foundation of your biochemistry is created. And this is something that science knows, but it's just our Western model is just now beginning to really understand it. And Western medicine isn't focused on this. If it was, it would be a solution model as opposed to a symptom addressing model. So anyway, what I was saying before was that my enteric brain clarified. I was able to remove these final layers of trauma and shock and toxins out of my system, and my enteric brain became completely coherent with my cognitive brain. My cognitive communication system was completely linked to my enteric brain. And within that, I acknowledged the 5 signals and was able to really understand this in a whole new way. So I've been laying that out, and what I'm seeing now that's really required for people to be able to take the 5 signal process, your own internal knowing process, to wake up in that process and really listen to it and trust it, that it requires this 30-day focus. People who have actually followed the 5 signals and done all of these different things that I'll speak about on this call are having, tremendous breakthroughs, as well as really just having a lot of clarity and a lot of confidence. So just a whole different kind of power in your system that's coming from your internal knowing and that self-generating power, that self-generating energy where you can actually feel your own system building your own energy. And again, that happens in the enteric brain. And that all has to do with supplying your body with these 5 signals correctly. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is sort of lay out the whole enteric brain, the nervous system, how it is that we're set up as a stimulant-driven nervous system based on our culture. So what I'm going to recommend everyone do right now, if you're not already comfortable, is just sort of lay back, relax. We're going to be basically working with all of this. See if you can go into a receptive state. There is so much information to share, and in looking at all of that, how to do that, what I'm seeing is this is really just an entry point for us to start to create a framework and just a healthy container, a healthy model for us to work with. And so the more that you're in this process of listening to what your 5 signal cravings are, the more that you really start to listen to your own biology. From that place, the information becomes valid to you. So it's that place of where, unless you're asking the question, the information doesn't have that much meaning to you. But when the question is there, then the information, you can understand it. Okay. What I'm going to do, like I said, is just name how it is that the nervous system gets set up, how it's gotten set up as a stimulant-driven nervous system. The body requires very specific nutrients and in very specific forms. If you have the specific forms of the 5 signals met, your cravings go away, they resolve, and what happens is your body keeps stacking. Your chemistry keeps stacking. Your whole system keeps basically thriving. One of the things that's really important to understand about that we're really talking about with all of this is pH. So pH is parts per hydrogen, and what that is, that's acid alkaline, whether your body is in balance with your pH. So I'm going to say a little bit about pH. Your cravings, your 5 signal cravings, are based on your pH. So ultimately what it comes down to is your pH defines what your mineral, how it is that your minerals are working. So if you're eating the wrong foods, like acidic foods, like cooked heavy meats, lots of cooked foods that are overcooked and that are dead of enzymes, from that place you're going to be craving more and more of those foods. And that's because acid craves acid. The idea is to actually have a balanced pH where you don't have a charge in your system. You're not craving things from a place of desire, where you're actually you're able to sense what it is that your system requires, fulfill that requirement, and feel satisfied. You'll notice the more that you eat acidic foods, the more that you crave them, you don't feel satisfied. And that's the main key in understanding how it is that the 5 signals work. Okay, so let's go back to the salt. As a child, when you're first born, let's say that your parents fed you, let's start from birth. Let's say that your mother is eating cooked salts that are coming from cooked foods. Once you cook minerals, the molecular structure actually changes. So what that means is that the salt, and I've only seen one salt as far as salt goes that doesn't act as a stimulant in our nervous system, and it's the original Himalayan salts, the blue, the royal blue. So going back, if you have the wrong salt, so let's say the mother has this wrong sodium in her system and she's breastfeeding you, or let's just say you have a formula where that salt, that wrong sodium, is in your formula. Either way, what that does is it creates a stimulant reaction in your system because of the fact that your body can't use that sodium. So what happens is you have an allergic reaction to it. You actually have an allergic reaction, which triggers the enteric brain, which is the gut brain. So when you have a stimulant reaction, meaning you have an allergic reaction to something, your adrenals spike. And the reason why is because you're having a fight or flight response. So you have the wrong sodium in your system. It sets up a fight or flight response. So has anyone ever felt right before they realize they have a cold sort of euphoric or sort of like just really, really happy and tons of energy? Has anyone on this call had that experience before?
Yeah, I think I've had that, yes.
Yeah. What happens when you have that, what's happening is that your body has been exposed to something that it's trying to fight off. So it spikes your adrenals and it sets up your chemistry to speed up and to basically respond to the situation. So it sets up all of your chemistry to start basically moving things out more quickly. And that euphoric type of response is what gets set up in our nervous systems when we have the wrong elements in our body. So the salt, going back to that example, sets this response up in your nervous system. So in this example, we're talking about the birth. Your first nutrients become actually stimulants. They set up a stimulant response. You then start craving that stimulant response. In other words, the nervous system has this peak moment that's actually an allergic reaction that then spikes your adrenals, that then sets up all of your biochemistry into that fight or flight response. Is that clear so far? Is this clear what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Are we all good? Okay. From there, your nervous system starts to develop, and it starts to grow according to that stimulant response. Now, just in this example with the sodium, if you're exposed to the wrong sodium, that throws off your pH. It makes your system more acidic. And so then from there, your minerals you start basically becoming more and more acidic. You start craving more and more stimulant-based foods. So let's talk about, for example, protein. Once you cook protein, and I'm not promoting raw food or anything like that. I'm just talking about what happens on the physics level, on the molecular level. Once you start cooking that, the molecular structure starts changing. It becomes more acidic. The other thing is that the sugars change over to a type of sugar that your body can't actually use. So that sugar, again, sets up a stimulant response. So during this time, the nervous system is developing and growing, but meanwhile, you still haven't gotten the signals met. So what that does is that starts to become a lack of nourishment, a malnourishment starts to develop. Do you follow what I'm saying? So basically, the system is riding off of the adrenaline, off of the stimulants, but it's not getting the nourishment that it needs, and the body's becoming more and more acidic. What that does is that's actually how you could look at this, how neuroses get set up, because you're not getting your basic forms of nourishment. And so that's learning disabilities. That's all of these different things that we're seeing as far as retardation, breakdown of the body. So when you're not getting the nourishment that your body requires, the body starts breaking down. It's very simple. If you're actually developing a nervous system at that time, what's happening from that place is that you get a conflicted nervous system. The perfect example of this actually is autism. We can see this very clearly with autism. What we're looking at is a traumatized nervous system that's overstimulated, that's building, but that's falling apart at the same time. Is that clear so far?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
So you're saying that you're getting food, but the food is creating an allergic reaction and making you acidic. Is that right?
Yeah, basically So over this series, we'll really break down what exact foods don't create allergic reactions, don't become stimulant reactions. But yeah, that's basically what I'm saying in a nutshell. When the pH is off, which, again, that has to do with having the right amounts of minerals and water and oxygen. When that's off, that's what sets up basically the container or the landscape for disease. So when your pH is balanced, no viruses, no molds, no fungus, no anaerobic bacteria can take root in your system. So I can think of a perfect example where someone can continue to eat something that has bacteria in it, like people will eat raw meat, and somebody will get a parasite, same meat, and the other person won't. The reason why is because that person who doesn't get the bacteria or get the parasite, it's because it just passes through their system. They don't actually, nothing can grab on. They don't have the acidic environment for the pathogen to take root into the cells and start basically breeding.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very basic. What we're talking about is physics. And in a pH balanced environment, our pH balance is 7.5, somewhere between 7.25 and 7.5. Water, the pH of water is 7. So we're just slightly more alkaline than water. And that's because our body is mostly water. And we require a slightly more alkaline environment so that bacteria and fungus and viruses and all of these pathogens, these anaerobic pathogens, can't take hold. So it's a very sensitive balance, but it's actually very easy to maintain when you understand what your body's asking for, when you actually understand what your body's looking for. The key with all of this is to understand that everything that you consume creates a reaction. For example, if I have a piece of steak right now, my signals are going to change, and that's because I've just changed my pH. If I have a lemon right now, all of my signals are going to change. I'm going to crave different things, and that's because my pH just changed. This is so important to understand because it overrides the idea that there's an ideal. The whole thing about the 5 signals is that they're very personal, they're in the moment, and they have everything to do with what's going on in your system right now, and that's all. So there's no authority figure that can tell you what to eat or when or how, and there's none of that actually works because of the fact that it's based on where your system is now. So what I'm doing, what's exciting for me is to just basically offer you what I know is the best forms of nutrients and actually look at why. So the more that you have that pH balance, the more that's your blood and all of your tissue having proper circulation, proper nourishment, and being relaxed and present. And really what's happening inside of all of that is that your electrical system is functioning coherently and able to ground. Your 5 signals are communicating what is required for your pH to be in balance. You can learn how to listen to your 5 signals as opposed to your stimulant responses. From that place, your body naturally just starts to balance and your natural cleansing starts to happen. And so there's basically 3 things that are going on with your body. And if they're going on correctly, you're at peak performance. But more importantly, you're grounded in your spirit as opposed to being grounded in a stimulant-driven nervous system, which is the ego. So basically, there's nourishment, circulation, and after that comes detoxification. These 5 signals, if you listen to them correctly, if you really start to get into that process, will naturally start to tell you what it is that your system requires to balance your pH. Now, if you go out into the world and you go into different systems, what you'll see is that there's a lot of focus on balancing pH and a lot of different ways of doing that. But what I noticed when I look at all these different systems is that no one's actually listening to their own body. No one's actually listening to what it is that your body's asking for. And what I see is that a lot of people don't know how to listen to their bodies, and that's because they don't know how to trust their senses. Your sense of smell and your sense of taste, as well as that gut feeling of what it is that you're craving, those are your main communication system, and they pull you back into balance. And again, I'm only speaking from my own experience here, and I have tried really many, many, many different systems. And what I've noticed is that I always come back to just listening to my own body. So when I had the whole, kind of shift where I could actually hear and feel my system in such a clean way, that was when I really got that that's the system that works for me. And so that's really what I'm offering and holding for this workshop. So what we'll do is start breaking down your cravings. This is where the work is phenomenal. This is where you break through your emotional addictions to food, your biochemical crisscrosses, meaning enteric brain trauma, where all of that brain trauma and that crisscross communication sits. You resolve it literally within moments of supplying the 5 signals correctly. And I'm telling you, I've seen such amazing results with this. People who have tried everything, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically. They've tried everything spiritually. And yet in working with the 5 signals in this way, those infantile patterns and that deeper place of where you feel like you don't have enough, it gets resolved in this process. What happens inside of that when you resolve this deeper trauma and this deeper feeling of disconnect and lack, when you start to really resolve that, you start trusting your inner knowing more. And within that, you start cleaning up your relationships, cleaning up your life around you, because you feel this deeper inspiration start to come forward because you don't feel that enteric trauma. You don't feel that noise in your system anymore. And so that inspiration starts guiding your life. And that is the intelligence guiding your life. And so you start making really positive moves in the right direction that are coming from this intelligence that has the overview of everything. So your inspiration and that gut knowing, that comes from the part of you that is way beyond time and way beyond form and knows exactly what's next and how all this works. It really takes your meditation practice to a whole new level. It takes that inner listening and that self-trust to a whole new level. You resolve those infantile patterns.
Cass, is this talk going to be available to people who missed it?
Yeah, I just recorded it.
Okay, cool.
Is this resonating for everybody on this call?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's the best you've ever laid it out.
Yes. The really nice thing that happens when you start listening to the enteric brain, the more you listen to it, the more that you start to trust the steps that are in front of you. And each step then leads to the next one, but it's all coherent. You just keep listening and following the flow, and then what comes through is coming from that intelligence. And the more that you learn to trust that, the more coherent it becomes. And you can do it in your own way. And once you start to align your diet and get all of that crap out of the enteric brain and out of the digestive system, get all of that crud out of there, you'll have a pretty solid foundation to step forward on. What I want everybody to understand about this work is that there's no ideal. You're not going to be asked to do something that everybody else is supposed to be doing because no one's doing the same thing except for listening. And within the listening comes your unique work, your unique process. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for everything that I have to say. If anyone has anything that they want to name or ask questions around, we can do that.
This was really so excellent. I feel I'm at the right place at the right time doing the right thing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, we're all good. Okay, so have a beautiful night, everybody. Much love. Bye.